You'll hear me introduce them. Welcome to Fresh Set of Downs. My name is Bruce Badgley. Along with me is my good friend, Bob Long. Dave Michael will be along in a little bit. Bob, we've got a very special guest tonight. Why don't you introduce him?
Well, we sure do. Bruce, thanks for always running the show and doing a great job. This is the fun time of the year. And we're going to have even a little bit more fun talking to a special guest, Tim Bigelow, the head coach of Camp Hill, the newly minted and newly crowned District 3 2A champion Camp Hill football team. Tim, thanks again for being with us here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, what a game. I mean, what a game for your program. You guys must be walking on water these days.
Yeah, I mean, to win a district final and do it against our crosstown rivals was pretty special for us.
So that game, there was so much riding on that game, of course. You talked about a crosstown rival and how important that rivalry has been over time. I think Bruce and I, and maybe when we talked about it with you, we kind of backed into that might have been the first and only time that you guys had played that rivalry in a district championship format. That had to be a big deal going in, avenging a 1-point loss earlier in the season. So I'll ask how you did it and what the emotions were of that night.
Yeah, so we were going into the game as like a normal game. Like I said to you guys before, we treat every game like a normal game. It's not a district final. It's us against Trinity. The reward is great if we win, but it's a normal game. So what we try to do is try to instill in our kids is, listen, this is just a normal game. Relax the tension, relax the pressure. Don't feel that you have to really push yourself to make it to the district final and win the district final. It's just a normal game. Just keep winning games. And what I felt is that our kids really relaxed this time. They were really uptight a little the first game we played them. And I think this game, they were kind of a little bit more relaxed. Even with Messiah in the game, I think it's just another game. So like I was telling Bruce before we got on tonight, our league is really, really tough. And I think that going through our season and doing what we did made us that much stronger for our district final game.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about, before we came on the air here, I've seen a lot of teams that, and you talked about the fact that winning a district championship was your team goal there. And, how much emotion, goes into, winning a district championship. And, I mean, how much emotion, if these guys relax and went ahead and win, they should have a lot of emotion left. They should be ready to move on, shouldn't they?
Yeah, we really had a great time that night when we won. So Friday night was one of the best nights I've ever had in my life. I mean, we had a great time. We celebrated. Beating York Catholic is one thing, but beating Trinity in a district final is another. So we really had a great time celebrating that victory that Friday night. But now, that it's bonus games. Like I tell our kids, it's bonus games. So we're now playing in November. We're playing mid-November. The key is to get to Thanksgiving. Once we get to Thanksgiving, then we keep going. So, the kids are really, really bought into what we're doing right now. And I think that with us staying healthy and us knowing what we have to do, I think we are really excited for what's coming up in the next couple of weeks.
That's great. And we'll certainly get to what's next and previewing your potential run through a state playoff. But back to Friday night, knowing that Mickens was going to play, that he was going to be banged up, but he was going to, give it a go. You guys know how talented Bill Joy is well out of the backfield. He had a key second half drive that pulled Trinity right back into the game. How did you guys prepare for what they had coming out of the backfield? And then you see, hey, Capuana's taking snaps out of the backfield. Tanny Young, is going to take some snaps in a direct snap type of situation. How challenging was that to prepare for that team, and how did you guys manage it so successfully?
I think what really helped was going against Annville week 1. They are a really good run team. And we held them to like 33 yards offense total, besides a couple trick plays. So that really gave us confidence in the run game stopping portion of our defense. So that was number one. Number two is that I don't know if you guys remember a guy named Bill Williams. He's on our staff. He was one of our best players ever come through Camp Hill. But he was Messiah all week. And that really gave us a huge, huge advantage to be able to mimic what is going to be coming on Friday night. He actually just tried out for the Stampede, so he's still that legit that he is one of the best running backs in the area still. Just graduated from Shippensburg last year, so he's still one of the best running backs in my opinion in the area. But he was mimicking him all week long, and our kids had to step up or he was going to torch them.
Yeah, and speaking of, your team and what have you, and preparing for a state run, are you going to do anything, special or different? Usually coaches kind of ratchet back a little bit, the physicality of practice. I get that, but is there anything, it related to, game prep? You mentioned that it's just another game. Boy, that's kind of hard to sell these kids on the fact that playing in the PIAA tournament is just another game.
Well, ironically, Camp Hill boys soccer is doing just as well as we are. They're in the state semis. So they play tomorrow night at Elko. So we're giving them the first night off tomorrow night. And I really want them to go watch the boys soccer game. So that's one of those things where, like, I know they're beat up. I know it's a long season, but we're giving it off tomorrow night. I think they need to go out and enjoy the boys soccer team and encourage them on and make sure they get to the state final, which will be Friday night.
Oh, that's great. Socks, underwear, and t-shirts. Bob, you got a question?
I sure do. Yeah. So let's look forward then, Tim. Let's look to this weekend where you take on a team from the Philadelphia Catholic League, West Catholic. It's a little different. Friday night, crowd was packed. And it might still be packed. Don't get me wrong, but now you got a Saturday noon game, if I saw that correctly.
Well, let me correct you. We were just told that it's a home game at 7.
It's at Camp Hill at 7 o'clock.
They could not find a field.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. Christmas came early.
So you guys are going to pack the place and sell it out, right?
As the away team.
As the away team, of course. Yes.
Yeah. So breaking news, it's going to be Friday night at Camp Hill.
Wow.
Look at there. Breaking news. Wow. Incredible. Jesus.
So I guess what that means then is you're hoping, and I don't know what time the Camp Hill, I'm looking ahead here, but hopefully for your sake, soccer wins. And I don't know, what would that be, around 1 o'clock and then double?
So we're all going to go Friday at 1 o'clock at CV. We're all going to take off work, take off school, go watch that championship game, and then come back, regroup, and then come win a state quarterfinal game.
Wow.
And that's not far. I mean, the Cumberland Valley is what, maybe 20 minutes?
If that, yeah. Well, it depends on the Carlisle Pike. I don't like the Carlisle Pike. Too many.
Well, what a time then. I mean, what a time to be a member of that Camp Hill community. And part of it's you, Coach. Part of that's you bringing this program to that, I know you've been doing this for 17 years and there were great coaches before you took over the head role, but to be a steward of this program and a role model for these young men, certainly to see your counterpart on the soccer side doing the same thing. What does that speak to and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, Camp Hill's a special place. I grew up here. I live here. My kids go to school here. I coach here. My family went here. My parents went here. I mean, it's a special place. We really love the community. We love the support. So if a baseball team's in a state final, which they were last year, if the soccer team state semifinal, we're there. We support each other. We love each other. We share kids. It's not like these big schools where there's, you specialize year round. We don't encourage specialization. We want kids to play as many sports as they can. So we all share. So I want kids to go out and support as many sports we have. And that's what we do at Camp Hill. Being a small school, we want to promote and encourage kids to go out and play as many sports as they can.
Well, that's pretty incredible. Breaking news here on Fresh Set of Downs. Wow, good stuff. But Tim, I tell you what, Bob and I were just thrilled. Not only the opportunity to get to know you a bit more on the phone call, but then to see everything unfold for you on Friday night was just something special. And now, I mean, it just seems to be kind of unfolding, a little bit more in how you're able to, as a school and the football team, really embrace all of the athletics there at Camp Hill and the excellence of, participating in multiple sports at a high level in the state of Pennsylvania. Congratulations, my friend. And
Hey,
Bob, you
Bruce,
have a final
Bruce.
question?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to let Tim go before we ask about his quarterback, Drew Brandstetter, and
Oh,
everything that he's been able to do for this program. Because you talked about, hey, Bob, you're going to see the air raid and you're going to see Drew cut it loose. Well, we saw that. We saw how accurate he can be, how he can move in the pocket where needed. He's a special player, and Jordan Hill's coaching a wonderful defense over there at Trinity. And I think it speaks to how well your quarterback played to be able to do what he did to break it down at key moments in that game.
Well, thank you. Yeah, he had a great game. Kobe Moore had a great game, but one of the unsung heroes of the game was Noah Doy.
Mm-hmm.
Noah Doy had a really special game. He's one of those kids that, he's athletic, he's gifted, but he's small, and he goes way harder than a small kid normally would be. So he had 18 tackles. He had 75 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he just was all over the place.
And he went airborne for that one touchdown.
Yeah.
Time on there.
Yeah. So he's just one of those kids that, like, there's no such thing as lazy. If you tell him to run a route, he's running a route. He's never going to be lazy. He's never going to say, well, I didn't know what I was supposed to do here. He will ask a question before the ball snapped and say, what am I running? Like, so he's not one of those kids where it's like, he is all in. He's bought in. So he had a really fantastic game as well on Friday night. But yeah, Drew's one of those kids where if you give him the reins, he will take the reins. And that last drive that we scored on, that was one of those things where we trusted in him. We trusted to put the ball in his hands and put it in the hands of the receivers that needed to be open. And where they were open, he was all in. So we were excited for that last drive for him.
Well, we're excited to see him move on in the PIAA playoffs. Tim Bigelow, head coach of Camp Hill, thanks for joining us here on Fresh Set of Downs. We wish you all the luck in the world, and especially now, golly, you got a home game on Friday night at 7:00
Cool.
for the initial PIAA tournament football game this season. Tim, best of luck.
Appreciate everything you guys do for us. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, man. We'll see you later.
Take care.
Take care now. Bye-bye. Wow. I think one of the memories that I'm going to take from this postseason already is just getting to know Tim Bigelow and this Camp Hill football program a bit more, Bob. What do you think?
I think that was an incredible interview. I think that the team is a great story. We talked about it on Friday night on our broadcast on Penn Live. Don't let the 6-5, now 7-5 record fool you. They've played up classifications. They have played a very difficult schedule. They lost a heartbreaker to Trinity in the regular season that they avenged on Friday night. And I think he nailed it about that drive. So 6 to 8 minutes or so is taken off of that fourth quarter. Boog Joy, the backup running back for Trinity, who is tremendously talented, dominates the line of scrimmage. Trinity's offensive line was fantastic on that drive. And the defense bends, doesn't break, forces the field goal. It's 13 apiece. Well, what does Drew Brandstetter and that offense do? They motor down the field. They score with 2.5 minutes left or so. And they force a Trinity team that just took 8 minutes off the clock and got a field goal out of it to try to go down and score a touchdown and tie the game. And weren't able to do it. Camp Hill was the better team that night. I thought it was a wonderful time talking to Tim before we went on the broadcast. I think it was immediately accretive to what we did and the stories we were able to tell. I think this interview was fantastic, and I think that's one of the great games that this postseason will yield. all the way through to mid-December. There won't be many better games than the one that we broadcast together on Friday night, Camp Hill versus Trinity.
Yeah, and I like too the fact that he's got a little positive diversion this week for the football team. Okay, they're going to go see the soccer team play. They're hoping that then they can go see a state championship game in the afternoon and then play a state playoff game that night. That's got to be just great for the kids' psyche that they can kind of escape, from
Yes.
thinking about it and go out there and play instinctively and say, yep, it's just another game, as Tim talked about. I think it only lends itself to, to some good thought process once they hit the field there. But
I
that's
agree.
gonna be pretty incredible. I've never heard of anything like that, and you know what? They're taking advantage of it, and good for them. Good for them. So our buddy Dave Micah, he just texted me in here. He's going to be getting on here in a couple of moments, but and then once we get Dave on, we'll talk a little bit, and then take a look at some of the other games that we saw last week, or everybody saw. But I guess the one game that I want to talk about before I guess we can talk about right now is the St. Joe Prep LaSalle game.
Yeah.
And that talk a little bit about that game, that rivalry, what it means, and not only what it means between the two teams, but what it means in relationship to the state tournament and St. Joe Prep.
Sure. Wonderful rivalry across many different sports. Certainly in this area, Philadelphia, it's the best rivalry out there. Kudos to St. Joe's Prep, though. Aside from LaSalle's win in 2021, which still reverberates around the Philadelphia Catholic League ranks, it's the first time since 2015 that St. Joe's Prep did not go undefeated and win a Philadelphia Catholic League title game. So that was 2 years ago in 2021. But that was also a historically very young St. Joe's Prep team, as you remember. And that was when Samaj Jones was a sophomore and David Washington was a sophomore, and some of these freshmen receivers like Brandon Raymond was a freshman. And so basically what they've done in the time since is reload, and these sophomores have become juniors and seniors, and they still have some young talent behind them. So it's been very difficult for LaSalle or anyone else to compete with the St. Joe's Prep team. I think Saturday was an indication of that as well. Candidly, Bruce, the first time these two teams played, LaSalle had 4 offensive linemen out, the 2 running backs, 1 and 2 out, several receivers hurt, and no kicker. And most of those guys got healthy for this second go around. And so there was a thought, hey, could this be a opportunity for LaSalle to put a little bit of a scare into St. Joe's Prep? And to the Hawks' credit, they did not allow that to happen. It was 28-7 at the end of the first half, ended up 45-7. It got a little chippy at times over the course of the game. LaSalle's season was ending, and they were getting beat pretty good by their arch rival. So, those things can tend to happen. Kind of a nothing to see, move on type of thing for St. Joe's Prep. It was a game they were challenged last year by LaSalle. It was a 1-possession game last season. St. Joe's Prep didn't take it lightly this time, and they looked stronger in my mind than they were last year, which is scary because it was 35-0 at the half in the final game of the high school football season in 2022.
Yeah, and I feel the same. And I tell you what, we're all together now. Finally, it's been a little bit. Dave's wearing the reason why we've had a difficult time getting everybody together because of the Phillies postseason. I mean, between Bob and Dave, you guys were alternating weeks having like playoff and World Series tickets.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so, tough to apologize for that. I'll tell you, those games were wonderful experiences. But I am super happy to be here with the two of you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to have you back, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I would have been on a little earlier, but we had a big black bear outside when we came home, so it kind of delayed us getting in the house.
Oh, so you live in like downtown Nazareth then, huh?
Well, no, more up by the mountain, but
Wow,
yeah,
that's pretty crazy as far as a
yeah.
delay there. But we just got off. We had a great interview with the Camp Hills head coach Tim Bigelow after they
Oh,
won,
nice.
the District 3 2A championship. We got to know Tim here a little bit, and we're just getting ready to go through the rundown of last week's game. So, are
Yeah.
you ready to get started here, Mr. Dave?
Listen, I'm ready, and so I guess Camp Hill's gonna host
They
their game.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just found out. So that was the last game I was waiting for. So I could update the brackets after the show.
Yeah, that was breaking news here. And so anyway, taking a look at some really key results from last week. Downingtown West, they took control early
Hmm.
and never looked back against another undefeated
Yeah.
Souderton team there. Dave, what did you think about that game?
Yeah, that game I was interested in. Obviously Sourton went into that game undefeated. Downington West gets the convincing win and a rematch with Downington East, who I'll tell you what, has been lights out. I mean, I'm not sure offhand how many shutouts they've had this year, but that's a team that I'll tell you what, if I had to pick a team right now, and especially with CB West losing their running back, I think right now you'd have to favor Downington East to possibly come out of that 6A bracket.
Bob, any thoughts on the West Souderton game?
Yeah. The only thing I would say, and I know you're acknowledging this too, Dave, is there's a ton of really, really good teams on the other side of that bracket in terms of who would meet in a district final. But
Yes,
I like Downingtown West out of that side of the bracket, and I think, I think it has a really, really, good chance of seeing them against St. Joe's Prep or Parkland in a state semifinal. So, we've seen this program, right? I mean, at least kind of the back edge of Philadelphia proper here, or whatever, at least the suburbs. It's kind of getting out there a little bit, but it's District 1 country, and that's an extremely proud program, and it's wonderful to see them, right back to where they should be.
absolutely.
Yeah, and Ruston, in 5A there, they just keep on rolling. They jumped out to a big lead, big touchdown run by Ryan Loper early on there, kind of set the tone, and they kind of held off Plymouth White Marsh there, Bob. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. Ruston's had a really good go of things. Their soccer team made the PIAA state playoffs, and their football team rolls on here. I will say I haven't had the opportunity to watch PW as much as I have in past years, but know they had a good crew. Anybody playing at this point in the year is pretty solid. And Bruce, I know this is one team, Ruston in particular, that you've always had on your radar in terms of really, really good teams in that classification, and they're proving you right.
Yeah, Dave, any thoughts on that Ruston team? I'll tell you what, they've been strong all season. Their only loss is to a 6A opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they're gonna face a very good Chester team next, and there's some people think that maybe that game, whoever wins that game, could possibly win that 5A bracket. But I think, the lower part with Strathaven and Springfield Delco, I think they would have something to say about that. But two very, all four teams, very solid, very good programs.
Last week we were talking about the Southern Columbia Mount Carmel game. We actually had the Mount Carmel football boosters kind of chime in the fact that
Yeah,
had they beaten Southern Columbia, it would have been their 900th win
100.
in school history. Well, unfortunately, that didn't happen. Quite honestly, Southern Columbia may have played their best game of the year, Dave. What do you think?
Yeah, listen, I'm not surprised that they won. It happened last year. Mount Carmel beat them regular season. Southern Columbia comes back and gets them in the playoffs. And, they followed the same recipe and, maybe a little surprised that the margin of win, I thought it would be a little closer game. But listen, until Southern Columbia gets beat, you have to expect that they're going to be in Cumberland Valley and defending that state title.
Yeah, absolutely. Bob, any thoughts on Southern Columbia? I mean,
I
other
didn't.
than wow.
Yeah, well, wow, and it makes me ask a few more questions. What happened? Big injury on Mount Carmel side. I unfortunately did not get to watch the game based upon the game we were doing at the time, Bruce. But that score line is baffling, and I wonder what or if drove that. But here's one point I will offer is from getting to know Jim Roth over the years, one thing he has said, when we've done PIAA state playoff games of his, is what he's learned over the period of time is it's not just a 9-game regular season, and it's not just the 3 or 4 games that you might have to play in district playoffs. And then there's a couple more games and to win a state championship. You're playing 14, 15 games. And so what he has learned is we spend less time on the field than you would expect. We spend more time in, t-shirts and shorts and doing walkthroughs than hitting. And not that they don't work really hard, because they do, but that Jim Roth has learned that it is a game of endurance, and it's a long distance race. And so while they may not be playing their best football in September, October, what they're doing is building the right techniques and tendencies. And then they have, they're not as beaten down by the time the playoffs come around. And so if we're trying to put our fingers on why they seem to play their best at the end of the year, that mentality mindset from the coaching staff may have something to do with it.
Great point,
Yeah.
Bob. Great point. And yeah, it clearly just a stellar effort there. And look, Sealands Grove, another team that might be peaking at the right time. They just won just a great game over Jersey Shore, 44-19. I thought this was going to be a lot closer, Dave. What's your feeling on Sealands Grove kind of moving on there in the 4A bracket?
Yeah, I mean, this was a emotional game for many, many reasons. And the game got called during the regular season for what happened. And, this one, listen, Sealands Grove is playing some really good ball right now. Tucker Teets, their record-setting running back, 280 yards against Jersey Shore. And I'll tell you what, they're clicking at the right moment. And they're going to be playing in the state playoff game against Bethlehem Catholic, which we'll talk about in a second. And I'll tell you what, Jersey Shore, as we know, they've had some great runs, recently, and another great season. But this Sealands Grove team is for real, and they're ready to make a run.
I think that's the overriding message that comes out of District 4 here this week is Sealands Grove there. Williams Valley, winning the District 11 2A championship over Schuylkill Haven, I think was big too, Dave, right?
Yeah, it was. Schuylkill Haven, I think a lot of people thought that they may win that 2A District 11 title, but give credit to Williams Valley. They battled. It was a back and forth game, and now they move on and will play. Again, you win, you move on, you lose, you're done. And congratulations to Williams Valley on a great win against a very good Schuylkill Haven team.
Yeah, absolutely. Bob, any thoughts on the Williams Valley or the Bethlehem Catholic wins there out of District 11?
Quite honestly, if I may, I'm going to defer to my friend Dave on these.
Hey, okay. Well, I
I actually
sometimes
was
you
at that.
surprise me. So
Yeah. I actually covered that game, Bethlehem Catholic, Allentown Central Catholic, and just talking to a lot of the media on the sidelines, I think a lot of people thought it would be the other way with
yeah, I
Allentown
did.
Central Catholic, winning easily. And listen, Ty Ward, their first year coach, he's a Lehigh football star. He got those kids prepared because it really looked like, the game started at 6. It's 7 o'clock, and hey, Central Catholic, we're already playing this game, and they were so prepared defensively, offensively. I mean, their balance on offense was impressive. They threw when they had to. They made the completions they had to. They found some holes watching the film, and they just ran up and down. Like, listen, they had success running against Central Catholic during the regular season, but Central did win that game. And you got to give credit because, listen, you're talking about a team that's mainly freshmen and sophomores. Okay. This is a very talented young team, Bethlehem Catholic, and they're going to be really good next year.
Good stuff, Bob. And we touched already on Camp Hill's win over Trinity. Any final thoughts, regarding that Camp Hill win?
Yeah, for a District 12 Philadelphia guy, District 3 welcomed me with open arms and gave me their best game of the year. So I appreciate that. Now, listen, a lot of respect for both Jordan Hill and Tim Bigelow, those two coaches. And I think if fate has it the way it should, both of those guys are going to lead those programs for a long time, and that rivalry is going to get better and better. Camp Hill got them this time. And I do think they're playing with house money, Bruce, because maybe that was a minor upset, but love that game. You tell me what the date is for that one next year, and I'll be there.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we'll have it again next year.
And Bruce, wasn't this the first time they've met in the playoffs, right?
Well, for a district championship, they may have played against each other in the postseason, but this is the first time they had ever faced off against one another for a district championship. So extra special for sure, and probably extra special as well as this Ephrata Garden Spot game. Ephrata, one of the feel good stories here in District 3. They win, and kudos. Chris Miller was our first guest of the year from Ephrata. Way back when, I guess we called it right with that, early on here, but they just played outstanding football. Now Garden Spot won the regular season matchup. Ephrata wins, when it counts here in November, but boy, they were clicking on all cylinders. Couple long touchdown passes, taking advantage, forcing turnovers. Ephrata really playing good football in November. Man, been a long time since we said that. And so they win 31-10 over Garden Spot. Bob got the score there a little bit off, but St. Joe Prep obviously the big win over LaSalle. And
I tell you what, I liked what you did on the left there too, because you know what it is. It's very difficult to explain what goes on in District 12. District 12, PCL, 6A. So you're running two separate silos, right? Catholic League over here, Public League over here.
Public League, yeah.
They never cross until there's one team left at each, and then they play each other at each classification. So this was what would have been, prior to the league joining the PIAA, the Philadelphia Catholic League Championship, effectively. Now, Roman throws a wrench in it this year because they're really good and they beat LaSalle and they're a 5A team. But, in theory, they would have been crossing classifications. But now, regular season title for the Catholic League Championship, then you break into the different classifications, play until you have a 6A champ, play until you have a 5A champ, which is Roman Catholic, 6A St. Joe's Prep. And now they'll cross over and play next week. And I'm sure you'll have a slide with some of that. they'll play the public league champs. So
Yeah.
St. Joe's Prep, far and away, they blew every team out in the Catholic League, blew every team out, basically not named IMG. Team is so, so good and scary for the rest of the state, quite frankly. The game that I'm sure we're going to focus on in part is going to be the District 12 title game of Roman Catholic and Imhotep at the 5.
Yeah.
But that's just a little bit of foreshadowing. We got one more game to talk about first from last week.
Yeah, I don't know if this set shockwaves. I think not so much maybe during the game as after the game with Michigan, Penn State. It, and look, I've only been covering Penn State football, obviously from a media perspective for a couple of years here, but the whole, I never was in a situation at a Penn State press conference and had the same that had the same kind of tenor and the defensiveness, the defensive nature that Coach Franklin was under, and I get understandably so, but it was a very different tenor, and obviously as the week went on, as the day went on and into the next day, things started to really unravel. And, you thought that really Michigan was the team unraveling with all the suspensions and everything like that. And it turned out to be opposite with Penn State, really kind of, imploding on the field and then off the field too. Bob, what are your thoughts?
Could do a separate podcast on this. I think.
I know. We have to limit. We're going to limit ourselves to 5 minutes here today. We could go on forever.
We might go overtime here.
Right. I think. All right. I'll give one X's and O's thought, and then one thought on the personnel changes. X's and O's thought is the defense is unbelievable. Right. I think I don't know if it's lost. That's probably not lost, but it makes it hurt a little bit more for Penn State fans that the offense is that inept, because the defense played well enough against Ohio State to win the game and more than well enough against Michigan to win the game. I mean, Michigan threw the ball 7 times. McCarthy completed 7 of 8 passes for 60 yards. Why didn't they throw them? Because they realized in the first 2 series that they couldn't block Abdul Carter, Adisa Isaac, right? And the guys coming off the edge, they could not block them. Denied Dennis Sutton got into the backfield a number of times. And so they decided, you know what? We're going to run the football. We're going to bring in 2 or 3 extra linemen because we can't run block the way we've been able to all year long. And what I think really frustrates the Penn State fans is Michigan could do that. They could run the ball 20 straight times or whatever they did in the second half because there was no fear that Penn State's offense was going to be able to work the ball down the field and make it a track meet against Michigan's defense. So they just went into a shell in the second half, trusted the defense, waited for James Franklin to go for it on 4th and 6 from his own 30. And by that point, that was the levee breaking. And that was the big run by Quorum. Beyond that, a couple runs on 3rd and 10 that resulted in first downs. And that led to each of the first 2 touchdowns. But I mean, Michigan's one of the best teams in the country, and they had to change their offense 100%, 180 degrees because of how talented this Penn State defense is. So that's the waste, in my opinion, is the best defense, I'll say, in the country being wasted because the offense struggled. And I think that's what led to the Yursich firing, quite frankly.
And the thing, here's the thing too, is if there was an underlying, there was obviously a problem going on long before this game, is what came out, with the firing. But if you listen to James Franklin all year long, all he did is tout the fact of, our offense is great. We've got the nation's longest streak of 30 plus scoring games. Okay.
Yeah, and Corey Geiger gets his head ripped off because he asks about throwing it deep, and national media is ripping Corey. And well, you know what? Like, Corey has his day now, doesn't he? Corey's on to something. And Corey's a wonderful reporter, by the way.
Yeah, he is. He really is. And but it was never brought to a head, or it was never brought out behind closed doors by James Franklin until finally he couldn't, keep it behind closed doors any longer. And that was the shocking thing is like this was going on all along, but yet, the facade that was put out there of like, hey, our offense is great, 30 plus points a game, longest streak of the, in the country, yada, yada, yada. And, there are a lot of underlying issues and that really just quite honestly didn't get addressed.
Now, here's last thing I'll say, though, is if you are thinking about this as like steering the Titanic, and if you're thinking of James as the CEO of the program and what he's done with his contract and, the AAV, the annual value that he's earning didn't really increase that much. The number of years did with his last extension. But what did he work for? What did he campaign for, advocate for? He campaigned for, additional commitment to financial resources for the building, the Lash building and the football improvements, renovating Beaver Stadium, establishing resources to generate NIL opportunities through the fan base, and very importantly, broadening the pool that can be used to hire assistant coaches. And we saw that pay immediate dividends when he hired Manny Diaz 2 off seasons ago. How's that working out, right? He's the CEO. He's the head honcho of the defense. James has very little input there from what we understand. And Mike Yurcich was the guy that he hand selected. So Kirk Shiraka was the 1-year offensive coordinator, comes in from Minnesota. And I thought it was a big boy move to fire him after just 1 year and go get Yurcich. And Yurcich was not cheap. I wonder, though, if James still had kind of hands on that offense and whether Yurcich was, driving the bus or was kind of the chaperone of the bus. And so now here's the opportunity. Use that pool of money, be the CEO of the program, hire the big name coach, pay him a lot of money, and James, hand him the keys and walk away. Hand him the keys to the offense and run your program. And so, I don't think this has to be all bad, but I think this isn't rocket science. This is an extremely important hire for him, not just in the hiring process. He has the right resources to make the right hire, but then what he does after the fact.
Yeah.
Take your hands off, let someone come in and run their offense because it hasn't worked with, his fingertips on everything.
Yeah. Dave, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think Bob said it the best. The defense has been playing lights out all year, and the offense has been sputtering. So he's right. The next move is to hire a big time name, a big time coach, and give him the keys and let him be the offensive coordinator. But they need to figure it out because your record's 3-17 against top 10 teams. That has to change, or people are going to start saying, and some have already, we may need to make a change there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the thing that, like I said, for me, well, there were 2 things. First off, the way that he threw Yurcich and his staff under the bus was, I mean, he even in the press conference, when pressed about the 2-point conversions or whatever like that, he said, "Oh, as a staff, we went through the analytics, and if we came to that, we were going to use that." It's like, as a staff, I mean, that's a head coach's decision to whether you go for 2 or whether you kick an extra point or, I mean, now the analytics may be there, but whether you do or whether you don't, it's still the head coach's decision to whether you go for 2 or whether you go regular.
And again, sorry to keep on, but if you are going to go for 2, maybe don't motion out every eligible lineman to the one side of the field.
Yeah.
No blocking for your quarterback against one-on-one coverage. You already have only 12 yards from the line of scrimmage to the back of the end zone. The linemen can't move, otherwise they're ineligible downfield on a passing play.
Right.
And so you've already taken a condensed area of the field and made it even smaller with no blocking. And so, listen, I'm not an offensive coordinator, not anywhere near smart enough to be one. maybe they had a vision for how that play was going to be successful. I just have a really hard time seeing how it was going to be successful.
I never have seen, it doesn't matter what. I've never seen a head coach that early on in a game when you're only down, 14-9 at that particular point, forego an extra point to try and get within a field goal. I can understand maybe in the fourth quarter when you're down to the last 2 or 3 minutes and you might only have one more possession, but not after your first touchdown. I mean, that just blew me away. That just blew me away. But anyway, enough on that particular point. I mean, film at 11, they're pretty much from a major contention perspective. Penn State looks like they're out of it this year. So we're going to talk about games moving forward. This is obviously predominantly a high school football show. So we're going to talk about some of the big games that we want to look ahead to, guys. How about that?
Love it.
Sure.
All right. And the biggest one, quite honestly, right there at the top of the page in District 2, Southern Columbia and Troy area. That clearly, in my mind, the biggest game maybe in Pennsylvania this week. Dave, obviously, you have a great perspective on that area. We'll talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, I mean, Southern Columbia is going to travel up north, and it's a pretty good hike for them to travel up to Troy, and this is Troy's opportunity to make some noise. But in the end, you gotta like Jim Roth in Southern Columbia.
And that's for the 2A championship, by
That
the
is
way.
for the District 4 2A championship. I think this game could be close early. If it isn't and Southern jumps out on them, it could end up being a mercy roll. But I think this game's going to be a little closer than most people think, because that Troy team's pretty good up there. But I think Southern right now is in championship mode, and Troy's just another team in their way. So they're looking at being 1-0 this week.
Bob, your thoughts?
Question for Dave: is this the toughest team that they've had to play in a 2A in the D4 final in a while?
Maybe I wouldn't say the toughest, because they do play some pretty good programs during the regular season. Some are 3A like Danville, Loyalsock, right? Programs like that. I mean, this one, for the finals, this pretty good Troy team. So
yeah,
go ahead.
Great.
Yeah, Bob, your thoughts? I mean, even on the West Perry at Wyomissing, that's a rematch of the District 3 championship of last year that Wyomissing won big, but different.
And also, I think the first game that you did on your Sling Studio.
Maybe. I think so. I don't know.
I know that because every project you start. That's versus Wyomissing.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. That's just a little inside joke there, gang.
It is an inside joke. Mine was LaSalle versus Imhotep for like 4 years until I finally changed the project name. Anyways, should be a great game. West Perry's had a great team. I know they've been littered in the small school rankings for us, Bruce, all year long. Great game. Great game. This feels like this team or whoever wins this game, right, has a really good shot to represent the East in the state final.
I would say so. And so much was riding. The one thing that I like about this matchup here between Wyomissing and West Perry is so much was riding on the regular season to get home field just for this game. Because it's virtually impossible to beat Wyomissing now on Bob Wolfram Field on a Saturday afternoon. It's almost impossible. So West Perry really had to put an emphasis on the regular season to
Mhm.
try and be able to host the 3A title game on a Friday night on their own field. Unfortunately, they fell a little bit short. I mean, they lost their final regular season at home to Steel High, the defending 1A champs, and
Yeah.
that's really what cost them. But they've really got a tough road to hoe. Playing at Bob Wolfram Field. Why I'm missing plays such high percentage offense. They just don't make mistakes. They're not going to beat themselves, even though West Perry has got an enormously talented team.
Honestly, quite frankly, those Michigan Wolverines not throwing a pass in the second half, and with those wings
Yeah.
on the helmet, they look pretty similar.
Yeah, pretty similar. Yeah, maybe why missing showed up there in State
Yeah,
College.
Maybe.
uh,
So
still,
Bruce,
yeah.
do you think Brad is a Hockenberry? He's got to be the key if they're going to be in this game, West Perry.
I think that the key to the game is for West Perry to get out in front.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to get out in front. They've got to put a little bit of pressure on why missing, to kind of stick with the game plan because
Yeah.
they're very methodical and they're always known for getting out in front early. I think the key to the game has got to be for West Perry to punch them in the mouth, to get out in front early and maybe kind of shake them up a little bit. If they don't, then they have no shot.
Yeah. I mean, I think they really need to control that clock and win that clock. They need to keep that YM missing offense on the sidelines and just eat up a lot of the clock, but they need to finish drives. And that's where I think he could possibly be a difference. If they're going to have a shot, he needs to have a big game.
Yeah, and Steel High actually in the PIAA tournament. This is a neutral site game with North Bedford. The neutral site games, I didn't put the word at in there.
Mhm.
So that's a neutral site game. Bob, your thoughts on Steel High and their march to,
Really,
back to a championship?
really good team. Massive upset if they're not walking on the field at CV
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, I
in
think
December.
everybody agrees there. And
I'm
this is a Dave special, Nazareth and
I'm
Parkland for the
covering this.
District 11 6A. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game early in the season. We broadcasted with D11 Sports. Parkland jumped out early. Then at halftime, what Nazareth did was move their all-state, football player, wrestler, two-time state champ wrestler, Sean Kinney in the middle, and he just completely shut down, well, at least slowed down Parkland's offense. And, they were able to get in the game. They lost by one score. But I think for Nazareth is if they're going to win this game, they need to jump out early and match them in the beginning because you can't let Parkland get that 14-0, 21-0 lead and try to come back. You almost did it during the regular season, but listen, this Parkland team is just too good. But I think the big question going into this game is Parkland's quarterback in the play. He took a vicious hit. I'm hearing possible concussion. I'm not sure on that, what his injury is. I'm sure I'll find out Friday, but will he be able to play in this game? That remains to be seen. And you gotta give Parkland credit. Their quarterback went down. They were down against a very good Emmaus team and came back to win that game. A lot of emotion, they put into that game. But again, this is what everyone wanted to see. This is one of the big games in this area, Nazareth versus Parkland.
Bob, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, on the heels of that, one of the big games in my area, maybe the game of the weekend, is Roman Catholic Imhotep.
Yep.
Yes.
I've been talking to you guys about this game for close to a month now. Really looking forward to it. Imhotep is the favorite, no doubt. And Rick Preet said the same thing on this very podcast, quite frankly, so as to say, hey, listen, Imhotep and St. Joe's Prep, they've had a 15-year head start, in building their programs, but they're the standard that we're trying to play to. And to his credit,
Yeah.
in 5 years, he has built a really talented program, but provided some depth, right? So you can lose Tyseer Denmark in an offseason and still have some of the best wide receiver weapons in all of Philadelphia, Jaja Boyd and Trey Woodley and some of the other guys involved there, Samaj Beals at quarterback. So you have two studs going at it at the quarterback position, unbelievable guys in the trenches coming off the edge, couple of the best edge rushers in the area, Josiah Simmons coming from Roman Catholic side of things, but Devin Johnson has Kenny Woosley coming out of the secondary. Yeah. Just tremendous players all over the place. This will be a great game, and I hope it's a one-score game late.
I think that because of just what both of you, both of what you talked about there, with both teams having enormously talented players, I hate to kind of throw it that way, but I think that special teams is going to make a big, big impact. In this particular game. I think that historically, Imhotep has come into these big matchups and then had special teams lapses in some of these instances to either let the teams back in a game or in the case of a championship game, lose it. So but I don't think that's necessarily the case this year for Imhotep, but I just think that special teams magnified in this contest, and it's going to be a classic, that's for sure. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and just looking at some of the stats I have, scoring stats, I mean, for the season, Imhotep's only given up 5.7 points per game. As good as their offense is, their defense might be even better. And, how is Roman Catholic going to figure out to get in that end zone, not only once, but, they're going to have to score a few touchdowns if they want to be in that game with Imhotep. But I think a lot of people think that Imhotep's one of those teams that could get back to the state finals this year.
And we touched on it a little earlier in the broadcast, but a semifinal, Westchester Russin has to go to Chester on a Saturday morning. Nobody likes to play at 11 o'clock off exit 6 on a Saturday.
No, but Dave Berman likes to do public address.
Yes, he does.
Now, he wakes everybody up, that's for sure. Rise and shine. But I
He's
tell you
the
what,
man.
It's been this crescendo of Chester football here over the last 3 years. And this year, clearly, in my mind, they played their best football all season long. I mean, top flight football against really good competition and looked well doing it. They'll have to, and they're going to have to play some really good run defense because Ruston, makes no bones about the fact that they're going to run the ball right down your throat and you're going to have to stop us. And then when you stop us, we're going to run it down your throat some more. So will they be able to have enough horses up front to stop that vaunted Ruston running game? Boy, I don't know, but that's going to be a great game, Bob. What do you think?
I think it'll be a great, great game. Absolutely right. Chester's challenged themselves. They've played 6A teams. There was one upset in particular. It was Downingtown East, right? That kind of made it real this year. Ruston, a great win last week against Plymouth White Marsh. These teams are really, really good. And I don't know if I have a pick per se, but I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, Dave, what do you think? I mean, we're Ruston, Chester, and then, in District 1, Downingtown West at Downingtown East. I mean, just those two games there, those are just semifinals.
Yeah, and I just brought up Downington East's schedule. 8 shutouts this year, including 2 in they haven't given up a point yet since district playoffs, winning 56-0 and 35-0. I mean, this is a team that both programs. You imagine if both these teams were still one school, how good that team would be. But I listen. This is a team during the regular season. Downington East won 35-7. I still like Downington East to win this game, and my pick early was CB West to win this bracket, but again with the injury and the way Downington East is playing right now, because they're playing their best football, I think, right now. Um, why wouldn't you pick them?
I
And
agree.
the best game in District 2, Valley View and at Dallas for the 4A championship. There's two teams that have just been lights out all year. Dallas is just, flown under the radar. 4A in general has been so, I don't know, undervalued just because you have the two heavyweights of Aliquippa and Bishop McDevitt on the top. There's such great quality teams in all the districts in 4A there, Dave, right?
Yeah, and Dallas not too long ago, remember, beat MOTEP team not too long ago, and this is a good program up in District 2. It's going to be a great game. I'm hearing it's going to be a huge crowd going to this game, and but I like Dallas to win this game, maybe by 2 touchdowns.
And Bob, the game of the week, probably in
Mm.
District 3, Central
Mhm.
York at Harrisburg, Severance Field, Saturday afternoon. What are your thoughts on that one there?
I mean, Dave Berman frequents that too, doesn't he? It's the show of Dave. No, great, great game. Love what Cal's, obviously done with Harrisburg over the years, all the way to the state final last year. And young, right? I mean, Sean Lee back, Elias Koch. How good has he been? So, tremendously talented Harrisburg team. Central York, always there. One of those stalwart programs. Some folks were asking for Bo Perbula at times this weekend, by the way, up at Penn State. But shout out Central York. Great game in 6A. Wow. District 3 always produces a team that is ready to make a run through the state tournament. Just the quality and depth across, quite frankly, a very wide, area. York and Harrisburg and Lancaster and on up to Reading. I mean, it's a tremendously talented area, and I'll probably take Harrisburg, but Central York, great team this year as well.
Coach Janchuk just done a terrific job at Central York. I mean, the nice part
Yeah.
for me is getting to see, these coaches with their teams, in May and June, and the types of great conversations that you're able to have with not only the head coaches but the coordinators, and to really see, the skill position players and what have you. And funning around with Coach Cal. I tell you what, he's a real card, but boy, he sure knows when to put on the game face. And that Harrisburg team, they had a hiccup due to some bad weather in a loss to a Manheim Township. But boy, these two teams, Central York undefeated, Harrisburg with one loss.
Hmm.
It's going to be a classic, and it's
It
not
is.
even for the championship either. And so it's going to be a good one. District 3 football really is not the usual suspects, but in some cases, yeah, the usual suspects. And Rutgers is at Penn State. We're just gonna kind of leave that one go. We'll see how that happens. and everything. So, but a great show, guys. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
starting to get exciting now. Next week will be championships. We'll be talking about some PIAA
Yeah.
matchups as well.
We'll
I
be
want
talking
to
about
thank,
less games, but bigger games coming
yeah,
up.
yeah, less
Yeah.
games and more to talk about. Listen, I want to thank you guys for joining us. I want to thank Tim Bigelow from Camp
Yeah.
Hill for the interview and really getting to know him and his program here over the last week. So listen, guys, we got to run. But for my man Dave Micah, for Bob Long, my name's Bruce Badger. Hey, listen, we'll be back next week with the Fresh Set of Downs podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see